Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. I know what you conniving, money, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. You can keep your conniving money when you've been up for a bum. In a bills there be money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. Then you had your pocket full. In a bills there be money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money neighbor, money neighbor, money, money neighbor, money, money. Now I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
because it says that the oppressors are really bothered by the information that is being presented. They caught me off guard here, man. Right? They caught me off guard. I didn't even expect that that was going to be happening. But it's the IRA report we are talking about. Right? And because I know...
We had gone past the IRA report, and we were talking about, you know, people's acceptance of things and so on, and I was offering a different approach to the analysis of political phenomenon, you know. And you asked me the role of the opposition, and I was saying that no one scripts a struggle. You can't script a struggle. And I was giving the example of the February Revolution in Trinidad that started as a protest against in solidarity with West Indian students who were being discriminated at Sir George William University in Canada. And the students at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad were, they started doing some small marches in solidarity, trying to get the government to defend the Trinidadian students in Canada. And that thing evolved to the point where the army mutinied. The marches grew from a couple hundred to 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. And then the army mutinied and the government was almost overthrown. Eric Williams had to send to the Americans and the Venezuelans and Canadians for help. And I gave that example to show that you don't script a struggle. In February, the people of Trinidad were preparing for Carnival, the greatest show on earth, as they would say. And what should have been Carnival turned into a revolution. And that was 1970. In 9 years' time, you had the Grenadian Revolution. You know, we are not dealing with robots, we are dealing with human beings. We are not dealing with people who, because David Hines or Kidaki said, you must come out and protest. The people go, we're not dealing with robots, we are dealing with human beings who are complex. And they create societies that are complex. And we have to, we were putting ourselves forward as leaders and thought shapers and so on. We have to contend with the complexity of the society and we have to study our people. And we have to study what they're doing and what they're saying. It can be you are either quiet or you jump up on the street, and so there's so many options in between those two extremes. And we can't order people. That in itself is dictatorship. If we are ordering people that they must do this, do that, we are in that sense behaving no different from the governments that we are trying to struggle against and the oppression that we are trying to struggle against. You cannot order a struggle. A struggle evolves. What you can do is mobilize. But you can't order these things. So that's what I was trying to explain.
I understand. I was linking it that explanation to the fact that we were discussing the IRI report and what it says, and it would appear as though Guyanese are basically accepting it. Nevertheless, let's talk about another report. The State Department report is out, and again, as we like to say in Guyana, it digs some lashes against the PPP, and the PPP are definitely not happy with that. Would you want to share some light on that, or you want some more time for us to study and discuss it?
It's the U.S. Human Rights Report. And I've just finished reading the report. and I have to digest it a little. But the report was very scathing in its description of the human rights situation in Guyana. They were very scathing on corruption. And, you know, these are things that we have to try to make sense of. And that's what I'm saying. There are so many things happening in this society. And we have to understand, you know, that Guyana is not a backwater place where human beings just walk about doing nothing. I keep saying that a society is a complex formation. People wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about no struggle, but they are struggling because they have to think about what they're putting in that lunch kit to their child to go to school. They're thinking about what for lunch. They're thinking that they have $2,000, but to put a proper meal for a family of 5, it costs $10,000. You know, the society is complex, and we don't think in humanist terms. You know, we political people tend to reduce everything to politics, and that is a mistake we make. Politics is not politics as we are conceiving of it. Is not the only human activity. You wake up in the morning, you do this program, and you finish this program, you have to go make a living. You're a political activist, but man shall not live by bread alone. You have to go and you have to make a living. Sometimes you have to make a choice between making a living and attending a political meeting, and sometimes you, even as leaders, we have to make those choices. That, boy, you know, I miss this meeting because I have to make a living. And if we grant ourselves that scope, we have to grant it to people. You know, we can't reduce everything to politics. Everything is politics, meaning small p politics. But we can't reduce everything to what we call politics. We can't, and we shouldn't. We have to make the linkages between the woman who is struggling to put that meal on the table today that will cost $10,000 and she only got $2,000. We have to make the linkage between our experience and the state of governance in the country. That's our job. That's not our job. You know, the human thing. I was speaking to some people about a woman who apparently was killed and burnt in the Ozell Bachelor's Adventure. And I understand that woman had about 10 children. I mean, a lot of time you read these stories and we're reading the politics of it, not the humanity of it. And the more I heard from people in that village about that woman's experience, life experience, the more I'm realizing that there's so much that we as political people ought to know, but we don't know because we don't want to know. We're reducing everything to politics and a narrow sense of politics. And when we do that, we are not, you know, one of the things I learned from the UC Guyana and Walter Rodney, 2 of the people who had to shape my political, is their capacity to listen to people. You would be walking with Guyana, you want to go on Lime, and he picks you up to go somewhere, and you are following him home. And 15 people stop him from the road to where he live. And he stops and he listens to everybody. And you are there, oh Jesus, brother. You see, man, hurry up. you know, my hair, I gotta go them by waiting for me. But he stops and he talks to all of those 15 people and he listens to them. And later on, you know, you would say, but then, brother, you see, makes an analysis. And you were saying, wow. And then when you think about it, he is correct because he has a sense of what people are thinking because he spends time listening to people, not about their politics, listening to them about what happened in their lives. I remember, well, in 1984, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, brother, you see knocking at our door, me and my brother George lived together, knocking at our door and asking us to open at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we wanted to know what's the problem with brother UC. He came, we sat on our steps. And he said, you know, I've been thinking about this thing. Children are going back to school hungry because those were terrible days. The parents had to be in the line to get some basic items. It was a time of food shortages. And so, you know, children would come home from school in the midday, hoping to get a meal, and they couldn't get a meal because the parents in the line. And brother, you see, observe that. And he said, you know, look, we have to do something about that. And we came up with what became known as the soup kitchen in Buxton. He had $40 US. Somebody had sent for him and he gave it to me and George. And he said, you know, let's start this project. And we came up with the idea that we will ask every working person in the village to give $1 per month. And we came up with that soup kitchen, what they call Bab Food.
Baba Bowl.
And that thing lasted from 1984 right up into the 90s. And we were able to take that strain of the press. It wasn't direct political activity. But to this day, I walk in that village and people hug me because they remembered that human thing that we did. So I'm making that point to say, and the same thing with what became known as the Lessons Place. You know, because Brother UC was talking to people, he recognized that the education system, teachers had to be in line rather than being school teaching. They had to duck from school to go. And he realized that there was a problem there. And again, what started out as a lesson with 10 people in his flat, my brother George had another 10 in our little house. And that thing became, you know, Lessons Place. He came to us again. And he said, you know, we have to find a building. And there was an old rum shop owned by the Spencers. And he said, let us approach the Spencers and ask them if we can use the building. And we did. And we ended up in the afternoons from 3 o'clock up until 9, 10 o'clock at night, teaching almost 800 to 1,000 students a day. We had to do it in shifts. You know it because you're a product of that and you eventually became a teacher. And you know, the parents would complain that the children would say they're sick during the day, they ain't going to school. And as soon as 3 o'clock meet, they put on their clothes and ready to come to lessons. It's the human thing, Kidaki, I'm trying to say here. A lot of time we only look at politics in its macro sense and not in the human thing. And I said to this guy, walk through that village. 40 years later, you walk through that village and people remember that. They will forget some of the marches that we had and the direct, but they remember Lessons Place. They remember the soup kitchen. They remember what we do at 1st of August emancipation, where we would feed the entire village. They remember those things because it touched their lives. And so as political people, we must not only see politics in the direct sense, we must also see it in a human sense. It's one of the failings of Guyanese and Caribbean politics. It's not a humanist politics. And so when I object to some of your questions, it's that paradigm I have in mind. You know, that we must not see politics as a hamburger, a fast food hamburger. We must see politics as what Desmond White called slow fire. We must see politics as a larger process. Politics is not just about getting rid of a government. Politics is about ensuring that people live. It must be about that ultimately. Ultimately, like I said, people will forget a demonstration you had on the road. They forgot that in Cotamon, but they will not forget if you contribute to their education. As political people, they will not forget if you help to feed their children when they couldn't. And you're not doing it as handouts. You're doing it as building institutions in your community. But then we're too quick to give people handouts. The Kwayano model was never handouts. It was about building institutions that people don't feel that you are doing them a personal favor. That is the kind of politics that I think we are missing today. We feel that we reduce politics to PPP and removing the PPP government and APNU and so on. And I am not saying those things are wrong. Ultimately, you're aiming for good governance. You're aiming for a good government. You're aiming for that, but you're also aiming for transformation of the society. So because you be overthrow the government tomorrow, be not concerned about people's lives. We have to walk on different. We have to walk simultaneously on different tracks. It can be just one track. And so it's not that I'm opposed to those things. I can't be opposed to people taking direct action and going on the street, but I'm not reducing my politics to that. You know, we have to constantly think about people, human beings, the human side. The human side. I mean, Guyana, I move around, and people, most often they come, they will probably start talking about the PPP and so on, and then they get into their personal struggles. And as political people, you have to be able to address that. And you can't just tell them, well, we're going to solve it when we be in government. People are contacting me, as you know, already and saying, this year, emancipation, God willing. After 3 years of pandemic and 2 years of beating up and so on of black people and all that thing, people are contacting us and saying, we have to have a big emancipation celebration. Note, they're thinking about emancipation. They're not calling and saying, we must have some big march against the government. They're asking for a big observance of freedom, the anniversary of freedom. We have to listen to our people sometimes, or most times. Quiet ways, they understand what a big emancipation celebration means. It gives them a chance to express their humanity in their own way. something that is not controlled by politicians, something that is not scripted. And so I am pleading for a politics of humanism, a broader politics than party politics, a broader politics than anti-PPP politics. Those things are important, but we have to fight governments not just by reacting to government. We have to fight governments by organizing ourselves as communities of people. We have to fight government by taking care of our needs, becoming more independent families, more independent communities, a politics of humanism. Dr. King talked about the beloved community. That is where we have to think. I think we have, I understand it. I understand the frustrations every day. You open the paper, you're hearing that Harry Gill do this and, you know, they're brutalizing police people and so on and thing. And we have to fight those things, but we cannot reduce those things just to anti-PPP politics and, you know, going and march and all those kinds of things. You know, we can reduce it to that. And that is why I refuse to comment on Ms. Boller's decision to quit her job. It's a personal decision. And she has to weigh everything. Everything. She's out of a job. And she obviously had to make a decision between terror on the job and her sanity. And I can't reduce that to politics. I can only say to our people, we have to organize ourselves. We have to educate generations of people so that we reduce the instances of the Bollers. That is the task before us. It's multifaceted. And I, again, reference Guayana. I've learned from him that politics is not a one-way street. Politics is not a one-lane road or a two-lane road. It's walking on, we have God bless us with 2 legs. We have to multiply those 2 legs by 10. Walking on 20 legs at the same time. Always be aware of what is in front of us, yes, but also be aware of what is at the side of us. We have to look out of the corner of our eyes also. Because our supporters, our people, they have needs beyond normal party politics. And when you ask me what is the role of the opposition, the role of the opposition is not just to oppose the government and try to get rid of the government. The role of the opposition is to give hope to the people that a better day is coming. Without hope, we are not going to be able to move from today to tomorrow. And so we have to be in the business of not just trafficking in hopelessness, but trafficking in hope. We just came out of the Easter thing. The morals of the Christ story, dying on the cross and rising on the 3rd day, is about renewal and hope. That's the morals of the Easter story. And we have to traffic, not, like I said, in hopelessness, but in hope.
Thank you. As we traffic in hope, one of the things I personally was hoping was that we were going to see a change in the leadership of the Guyanese Teachers Union. And that election came and went. Vanessa Kisun was beaten by Mark Light, who I want to say a disgraced union leader, by more than 600 votes. I know you've been following those elections. What were your immediate reactions to that news?
I expected a different result. I expected that Vanessa would have either won or if she lost, she would not have lost by the margin that she lost by. And I think when we have those developments, we have to ask ourselves what happened. We have to ask ourselves why our expectations were not realized. You know, I'm hearing stories that the elections were rigged and so on and so forth. I hear all of those stories and I don't doubt them. But the fact of the matter is that we had two ladies running. One of them retained her position and the other one didn't win. And so, you know, as political people, we have to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves what happened, why we got it wrong. Again, I'm saying if you don't